Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Adina Oberman, a mom, former preschool teacher, picture book lover, and member of the Familius marketing team. I'm also the creator of Big Books for Little Hands, a site dedicated to connecting parents and teachers with the best books for the ups and downs of life with young children. We welcome today's guest, Melissa Taylor. Melissa is the founder of the popular blog Imagination Soup, a former award-winning teacher with a master's in education, a freelance education writer, and a children's book writer represented by Allison Helligers at Stamola Literary Studio. Melissa is the mother of two college-age children and lives in the suburbs of Denver with her husband and two rescue dogs. This episode aligns with the Familius habits: read together and learn together. You can learn more about the Familius 10 Habits of Happy Families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familius.com. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you because, as I mentioned, in another life, I was a preschool teacher and I was always looking for recommendations for great books. So I've been an Imagination Soup fan for a very long time. And I think so much of what you've shared has helped shaped so many parents and educators and helped to create so many readers. So I'm itching to ask you about your best tips for kids who might be reluctant readers.
Thank you. It's so fun to talk to a fellow book lover. So I know you'll probably have lots of ideas too. And there's nothing new under the sun. But since kids are so unique, I always think, what is it that they love that connects for them in their life? And then try to tie it into reading somehow. And what I mean by that is if they're a soccer fan, then why not read only books about soccer if that's what they want to read about? And then also, but taking it a little bit step further, if they need some incentives, then you might go to a soccer game as a reward. I am not. I wish that we could do intrinsic rewards for everything, and kids would feel personal satisfaction for reading. Wouldn't that be great? But sometimes you need to incentivize and gamify what you're doing because we're competing with screens and so how do you make books, especially for kids who are haven't found that book, how do you make that fun and exciting for them in a way that's meaningful? So if it's ballet, then somehow my oldest daughter was a reluctant reader, and even when she got older, I would give her biographies about ballerinas that she liked, and that's what she read Harry Potter, I think 7 times, and I had to go with it because I was like, it counts as reading, but which it does. And she didn't want to read anything else until like 3 or 4 years into it. Uh, so it's just kind of, I think, finding your kid's thing and supporting it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that we as adults have all of these um, books that we love, reading experiences that were impactful for us, and also sort of these ideas of what kids, quote unquote, should be reading at a certain age or at a certain level. Um, I feel like the point that you're making is this great reminder that their interest is really what's going to be that motivator. So I remember I had, when I was teaching, I had parents who would say, yeah, I can't get them to read a book, but they really love this little, like, I don't know, children's magazine about sports, or, they like reading the comics or, something like that. And I would say, yes, go with it. It doesn't matter if it's a
Yeah,
magazine, as long as they're
exactly.
reading. And you, like
Yeah.
you said, use that to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So, go, like you said, go to a baseball game and, grab a book from the library about their favorite team or their favorite players. So I love that
Exactly.
idea. Um, so I want to talk to you about in this same vein about summer reading, because I know that kids during the summer, when there are so many other fun things to do, can be reluctant to read. So do you have tips or ideas for getting your summer reading going?
Yes, I do. Again, you want to think about what motivates your kid. And one of the biggest things, and I know you know this already, but it's choice. So they're going to want to pick their own books. Nobody likes to be told what they have to read. And they might still have a list from school that is required reading depending on their age. But if you can give choice whenever possible, even when to read it in the day, do you want to read it with a meal? Do you want to read it with a snack? I feel like Dr. Seuss now, and with a hat or on a boat, or like trade off reading pages. So there's some ownership to it. So it's not, so they have that control. But the choice is such a big thing, I think, for motivating summer reading. And sometimes they don't know, you'll go to the library and there's too many choices. They don't know how to pick, which is okay too. So you can have them choose from a selection that you've already pre-selected. Like, here's 5 really good books. Which one looks good to you? Um, and remind them how good readers choose books. I think sometimes that's a thing that we forget that kids need to practice is that, okay, good readers, okay, they look at the cover and they look at the back and they look at the text and they might do the 5 finger test. Can I even comprehend the words? And so you're setting them up for success. And it is something that they like. One of my kids, the oldest one again, she was one of the kids, she just wanted to read nonfiction a lot. And I think part of it is because she also has trouble sitting still. So for those kind of kids, this is nice because she can read 2 pages anywhere. It's not like sit down and read the whole thing cover to cover. She can just pick a page, read that. And so just being super flexible, making sure the kids have ownership and choice, and that can do a lot. But then lastly, I would say make sure they have time in your schedule. I know summers get really busy, but that they have a specific time that you're going to dedicate to reading. And it can be, I think it's easy to do that at a meal. And because they have to eat. So if you can't find any time during the day, you can say, well, I'll read you aloud at breakfast, and then you can at lunch read to yourself, that kind of thing. So that there's set times, quiet times are great too.
Love that. Reading at the table. I mean, that's what I would want to do myself. But you're right. It is this dedicated time where you're sitting down and you're having this sort of focused experience. So adding in books is such a great idea. I also am the person that goes to the library and gets like a big bag of books, and I put them
Yes.
in the car with me when we're going on a long drive. Granted, if you have a kid who gets car sick, this is not a good idea. But just always bringing books with you, even if you're not going to read them in the car.
Mm-hmm.
My children and I last week went to a science museum, and I grabbed some of their books, I threw them in my bag, and we ended up having a little short wait before the IMAX movie started, and we had to wait a little while for lunch. So it was just 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there. But as you know, that's how you create a reader. You show them that you're reading,
Yes.
and you just read wherever you are. So I love it, the idea of incorporating books at meal times, and also remembering about nonfiction. My daughter is also really into nonfiction recently. She learned what the Guinness Book of World Records is at school. And so her big thing was she did not want to read chapter books anymore for a while. She wanted to read the Guinness Book of World Records, the most recent one. And we were able to incorporate choice because I could flip to the index and say, okay, what do you want to read about? Sports, or do you want to read about like food related records, or records related to people's bodies? So so such great ideas.
Well, and I love your idea about always having a book with you. And even, I don't know if this has worked for your kids, but when my kids started reading chapter books, they sort of like abandoned picture books. And I was like, no, no, no. So I would leave stacks of picture books around the house. Like literally it looked like I was a hoarder, but stacks and they couldn't resist. They would just pick them up. And so that was because it's a nice way to keep them reading picture books, but also they're shorter. They can finish 10 in, half an hour or whatever it is.
Absolutely. We're having that in my house right now. My kids are starting to move beyond picture books, which breaks my heart because my house looks like yours. There's
Yeah.
stacks and stacks of books everywhere. But yes, if you leave them around, especially those covers are so beautiful. They'll
Hmm.
definitely pick them up. Um, I wanted to also ask you about how to incorporate technology in reading because I really admire that point that you made about how whether we like it or not, we're in competition with screens. So, do you have advice about how to use technology to help kids get reading?
Yes. What I think is we can think of is that the ebooks are not a bad thing, and some ebooks can highlight the words. So that could be even if you're doing epic books, you can highlight the words as you're reading, or Kindle books, you can do whisper read, and it'll also you can choose if you want to highlight so that not only are your kids reading the text and they're also listening, so it's matching up. So I think that ebooks are a really motivating thing, especially for some kids. And also, I love that you can look up vocabulary words because if you click on the word, you can get the definition depending on what platform you're using. So I don't think, I don't know. I don't know if you agree or not, but like, I think it's an option, ebooks. So that's one thing. And then I really like the whisper reading so that they can also hear it.
That's that's very true. I think they're especially one of the really fun things about reading is learning all of these new words. And my daughter is the one who's like, well, what does that word mean? And it's such an easy way to just learn that new word and find out what it is and go back to it. So you mentioned Epic and you mentioned Whisper Read on Kindle. Is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any resources at the library that you would recommend
Yeah.
that people might not be
Well,
familiar with?
the playaways don't have the book. You're not reading it, but you're listening. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's the cool little looks like a phone size, and then you have the headphones, and you can just wander around with them. My kids would go to the swimming pool with them, which is probably a bad idea now that I think about it because they could have dropped it in the water. But during their breaks on swim team, they would listen to a playaway. They're called, and then they would get their reading in that way. So that's another idea. I think that there's still those other tape recorders with the books or the CDs now. I don't know, but I would recommend the playaways because those are at the library.
Yeah, that is a really good idea. And I think I mean, as long as you keep them away from the pool, I think that's fine. And yeah, I think it is such a great way to incorporate reading as a pleasure activity. Um, and also a tool for helping kids learn how to wait. Um,
Yes.
one little trick that I started doing because my son does like to read once you sit him down, but it's sometimes hard to transition him away from an
Mhm.
activity to get some reading time in. So we have been listening to um audiobooks or even short um read alouds on that are on YouTube, but when we're in the car, so we're just listening to the audio. And
Okay.
I find that is really helpful for keeping him interested in reading because he didn't feel like I had to pull him away from an activity, but he's also
Yes.
developing that sort of those listening skills and helping him, process the story. Um, and that's been kind of a fun way to keep reading involved even when we're on the go.
Yes,
So
I
that
love, and they can be on the go at your house. So my youngest daughter, she's 19. She's an artist. She still is obsessed with audiobooks, and because she can also draw at the same time. And my older daughter, she used to roller skate around her house because she needed to move and listen to our floors are trash, but that's okay. But that would let her move. She could be on a ball, she could be on the trampoline and still listening to a book. And the thing about audiobooks that we forget is they're still building vocabulary. They're still building background knowledge. They're building their knowledge of story structure and those kind of things are so important. And it's okay that they're not actually reading the text.
I'm so glad that you said that because I think we forget. I think we have this idea in our minds as adults of where they need to be reading the same way they would be in school at a desk, but there are so many other skills that can be developed through, audiobooks and listening. So thank you for sharing that.
Exactly.
Do you have any other advice for our listeners about how to keep making reading fun?
Well, I would say sometimes it just, again, don't give up. That's my biggest advice. Just keep trying all the things. So sometimes what worked last summer won't work this summer, but keep trying. I have a series I've been doing on Instagram with summer reading tips from other people, and I have tons of information on Imagination Soup. But sometimes reading in a book club is really fun because you're making it social, and that can be very enticing to many kids. And then watching the movie that it comes with a book. So if you pick a book that has a movie with it, that can be a really fun reward. And then you can get into some higher level thinking skills, comparing and contrasting. What was different? What did you. And then we already talked about books all over the house, pairing books with activities, book picnics. I think it's okay to do, let your kids read really short books, like you were talking about with on YouTube, listening to short books, and even easy books. Like my daughter who read Harry Potter way too many times, it was way too easy for her, but it's the confidence that they're building. They'll still um, develop their comprehension, I promise. And it feels fun. That is so fun. Like we do that as adults, right? Sometimes we just want fluffy reads, I call them, where it's that summer read. You don't really want to think too hard. It's just enjoyable and fun. And I think that's okay. It still counts, and graphic novels still count. They're
Yes.
developing imprints because they're having to figure out all the subtext and the visual cues, and they're again building vocabulary and background knowledge and story structure and all those things. I don't think we count how important that is, that background knowledge to comprehension later on. It's just really significant.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that. I think that we can get sometimes caught up in like reading levels and what kids are capable of, and especially in the summer when you want to fight that summer slide, being happy that they are picking up a book and they made that choice, I think is a victory, at least in my book.
Yes, yes, and it's okay if they're rereading the same book more than once. And it's my kids would. I don't. Do you still? I don't know if your kids are into it. I think they're coming out of favor, but my kids are into the Rainbow Fairy series, which are really predictable. The goblins steal something from, and the girls have to save the fairies and get it back from the goblin. Every single book was pretty much the same, and they would read them and reread them, and they were kind of mind numbing to me. But the point, it wasn't about me, because they're not going to do that forever. They're not going to read Captain Underpants forever. But it's okay that they think they're associating fun with reading, which is why read aloud is so important too, because they're associating love and fun and cuddles with a parent or an adult with books, and that's the most important thing, right?
Absolutely. I think that it kind of goes back to the point that you make about having choice, right? Like, I'm not, if I pick up a book and I start it and I don't like it, I might not finish it, but I will go back to a
Same.
book that I really loved and read it over
Yes.
and over again.
Yes.
So yeah, and yeah, kids are the same. I mean, my kids are not shy. If they are not enjoying a book that I'm reading,
Right.
they will let me know. And after we're done reading books that we've read for the first time, I'll say, okay, is this a thumbs up book? Is this a thumbs down book?
Nice.
Are we returning this to the library, or are we going to
Yeah.
keep it and read it again? Are we gifting these to cousins? Like, what are we doing? So, I think it's good. I think it allows them to be reflective and
Yes.
and self-aware. So I think
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like it's just as important to talk about the books that you don't like
I
as much
love
as the
that.
ones that you
Yes.
do.
Yeah. Why don't you like it? And I think that can lead to some really interesting discussions.
Yes. I
Yeah.
also love having these conversations, or at least especially when I was a teacher of young kids, it was such a great opportunity for language development, because sometimes kids can be
Yes.
hesitant um, to talk to you, but or especially if they're still developing language or their words are still emerging. But especially my kids, I mean, they love to complain. So they love to talk about things that they didn't like. And so you can get a whole story out of them about
I
things that
love
they
it.
didn't enjoy.
That's fabulous, because you're still interacting with the book in a different way, and that really is cool.
Absolutely.
And valuing what they think. I think when we adults do that, kids feel seen and safe, and that's what we want.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that's such a big part of who they are, and that comfort that's developing, like you said, with especially when you're reading with your caring adult, especially if it's like snuggling in bedtime. And
Yes.
yeah, those are my favorite parts of the day. I hope they're my favorite parts of the day for my kids too.
I think I felt it was kind of sad when we finally stopped with my youngest in 8th grade, because it was one of those things that was, I don't know, we probably could have gone until high school, but I was like, I love this, and I am also so very, very tired of doing it every night. I'm
Yes.
You're 13, and I think it's time, but it was sad.
Yes. Yeah. You kind of
But
there's a part of
it's a touchstone. Then you go back to remember that book we read. It's it's so nice.
yes. Those moments are so precious. I think those are the moments that I really treasure with my kids too. As
I
we
love
begin
that.
to wind down, I want to make sure that everybody can, all of our listeners can contact you. So, give us all of your contact information. Where can we find you?
My website is imaginationsoup.net, and I'm on all social media at imagination. All of it's Imagination Soup. So I am, like I said, doing the summer reading series, just kind of wrapping that up. But you can go back on Instagram, and then, but my website's the best place to find me.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Melissa. As we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Familius for their support in bringing this podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast and left us a review. And when you're ready for the next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you'd choose a book from Familius. One step at a time, we can make the world a happier place.